My name is William Padilla Brown. I've been studying mycology for 2 years, and I've been growing mushrooms for just that long. I'm not as great with wild identification just yet, so I brought my little book as we go on our walk because I figured it'd be nice to go on a walk while we talk about things. So today I'm talking about, or I'm introducing everybody to mushrooms as a medicine, and I only just started using mushrooms as a medicine this year, but I've been studying mushrooms as medicine extensively, and I feel comfortable enough to share my wisdom.
Up to the end, and they touch the atrazine, and the nuclei at the tip sense this new compound that they've never digested before. So it'll stream a bunch of nuclei to that specific tip until the nuclei are organized and figure out how to create a new enzyme that will then be able to break down the new compound so that they can digest it. This happens all within one lifetime. As soon as they figure out how to create the new enzyme, it backflows through the whole organism, and then instantaneously the whole organism knows how to break down a new compound, and then that gets passed down to the next spores in epigenesis and epigenetics. As you take in new molecules, or the mycelium takes in new compounds, it must change its DNA in order to code for that for future generations whenever it sporulates, whenever you procreate.
Epigenetics means above genetics. So if, for instance, you're a human being with a genetic predisposition for cancer or alcoholism or whatever they want to call it, genetics, if you don't have the environmental upbringing of your predecessors, that those genes won't express themselves.
They'll turn
so
off.
Epigenetics means you've risen above the genes and created a new genetics.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, and to add on top of that, whenever you access your epigenetics, if you come across something that hasn't been come across in any of your ancestral lineage, that then codes into your DNA, and continues with,
if you
to
survive.
your children. If you survive, the mushrooms that you can find outside in your biological systems will always be more effective than the ones that you can get at a store. They've recently started selling. I mean, since I've been alive, they've been selling mushroom extracts at health food stores and stuff like that because of how beneficial they are. But these mushroom extracts are grown in laboratory environments and sterile environments. So just like we have our microbiome, I don't know if anybody is familiar with that term. We have different host of bacteria and organisms that live inside of our system that help us to break down different foods, to help us to prevent disease. And if you discontinue sanitizing your skin, you'll create a layer of a microbiome on your skin, and then so forth. You create a microbiome that hovers around you, where you have beneficial microorganisms just floating around your body. And this is your first defense. Just like I said, immune systems and habitats are the same. As long as you're sanitizing yourself, or you're monocropping and putting everything out by itself, there's not those other organisms working in synchronicity to prevent disease. Because those microorganisms that are living on the outside of my skin or around my head or wherever, in my mouth, everything, they're benefiting from living in their ecological niche. So if a disease comes in and tries to take over, they'll fight it first before your immune system has to activate. So I consider it part of the immune system.
So we shouldn't be too clean.
Shouldn't be too clean.
Yeah.
And it's kind of tricky because of the environments that we live in, because we go outside and we're surrounded by not biological systems. We're surrounded by a sterile environment where disease is floating all around with nothing to prevent it. So you have to find a little bit of a balance for them, and they digest whatever's around them, and then they can absorb it through their cells. So these metabolites are actually highly medicinal for humans, and they're also antivirals, antifungals, antimicrobials. So then the mushroom actually concentrates all of the unique elements, all of the different things that the mycelium mat came across in its lifetime, puts it into the mushroom, and then the spore hyperaccumulates every little last drop of anything that was beneficial. And so the spores are actually, people are finding through recent studies, the spores are actually some of the most medicinal parts of the mushroom. But they're very hard to get access to the medicinal properties inside of the spores because you actually have to crack them open. So people have these crazy machines where they shoot a bunch of spores at a steel wall and they crack open.
And how big are they? I know it depends, but are you talking like microscopic?
Microscopic.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't do anything with spores just because I don't have any equipment or anything like that. I mainly focus on mushrooms and fungal extracts. So I do mycelium capsules where I'll eat I'll encapsulate mycelium that's growing on organic grains. So these capsules will then have the beneficial properties of the extracellular enzymes. Those are what I was saying, the enzymes that help the mushroom to digest everything from the outside. So when you're eating the mycelium, you're getting some of that. Then I also take it to the next level and I'll do double extracted tinctures of the mushroom body, or I'll just eat the mushrooms. Every single edible mushroom is medicinal. Anyone you can get at the store has medicinal properties.
Now you have to cook them though, right? Andrew
Yes.
Ross says they have to be cooked. You
Yes.
can't eat them raw.
Just like I was saying about the chitin,
Uh-huh.
the chitin is a hard structure, and it will bind in all the different proteins, complex carbohydrates, and sugars. So once you cook them, the chitin kind of loosens up a little bit, and then you have those things available to you. So I don't ever recommend eating raw mushrooms.
Okay.
It's one of the foods that you should actually cook. Mushroom has unique chemical keys for breaking down something specific. Like there's some mushrooms that can help in breaking down endocrine disruptors like BPA. Yeah, or just like I was saying,
I wanna know that
atrazine,
one,
or complex hydrocarbons, like the oyster mushroom. If you ever grow some oyster mushrooms on some straw or something like that, once they're done, they won't be able to produce any more fruits. They've eaten all of the nutrients that are available to them in the substance. You can pour motor oil on them and then wait about 2 weeks, and there will be mushrooms that fruit off of them that have no toxicity in them whatsoever, no motor oil in them whatsoever. They've successfully broken down the complex hydrocarbons into usable carbohydrates.
Can't we do that for energy
Yes.
and pollution
Yes.
and everything else?
Paul Stamets actually, I made an infusion. I don't really talk about these kind of things. There's a mushroom right here.
With the gills.
Yeah, with some gills. So I like to infuse a lot of the work of my different teachers, and I've been learning from both Scott Kellogg and Paul Stamets. And Scott Kellogg was working on this idea of floating trash islands, where he collects like plastic bottles and all these kind of things, and he puts like plants in there, and they start like floating around, remediating, and they increase biodiversity because you got different amphibians and different fish that come and different insects that come to live on these floating trash islands. But then I took it another step further, and Paul Stamets created these mycoboons, where he would get a whole tube, a hemp sock filled with mycelium, and he would float it in a pond. And the extracellular enzymes, like I was telling you about, they are liquid droplets that produce off of the fungal body to help them digest their foods. If it's floating in water, these extracellular enzymes will fall into the water. They're water soluble. They'll just fall into the water. So if you had a pond that had an oil spill in it, you float out one of these mycoboons and wait a while, and the extracellular enzymes will start to break down the hydrocarbons that are in the water. And this actually also works with salt water. So I was thinking, what if I put the mycoboon around the floating island and then had a synergistic, biodiverse, biodynamic floating island that once I let it go, it'll actually just turn into an island by itself, because it'll continue to increase the biodiversity. It'll
We
continue
could
to
get rich
recycle.
on that idea.
I mean, I'm just trying to save the world.
Exactly.